Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey, everybody. I am so delighted to introduce today's guest, Claudia Miller. Claudia is a sought-after career coach for women in tech, and she's helped her clients land fulfilling jobs at a senior level. She also partners with companies and organizations in identifying rising stars within their organizations and providing strategy insights and support in developing a leadership and talent pipeline with a focus on women and women of color. Due to her efforts, she's worked with top Fortune 500 clients and has partnered with World Business Chicago in developing a workforce development strategy in coordination with the City of Chicago's efforts in decreasing unemployment rates for persons of color. She's also the creator and host of Roadmap to the Executive Suite podcast. Due to her clients' success, she's been featured multiple times in Forbes, MSNBC, Thrive Global, and Business Insider put her in their top global list of top innovative career coaches. Please join me in welcoming Claudia Miller. Hey, Claudia.
Hi, Tammy. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so happy that you're here. As you know, on Work from the Inside Out, we love to begin with the early years. So take us back to those formative years and how they may or may not have informed where you are today. We'd love to hear about it.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. I'd be happy to discuss that. So, I consider myself to be like type A personality where, I was always really good in school. So I like to excel academically and I was very involved and, I was always told, I'm the first one in my family to really graduate from 8th grade, let alone now holding a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, that I really had to navigate this part of my life really on my own, just because no one in my network had even gone to college.
Yeah.
So I just followed, the information you hear everywhere. Just get good grades, network, get your experience, be involved. And I checked off all the boxes. So when I came to graduate from my bachelor's degree, I just assumed, well, since I did everything, companies are just going to start flooding me and offer me jobs and they're going to be competing against me and I'm going to get paid really well. And unfortunately, that is not what happened. So I found myself with one interview and thankfully they offered me the job, but I wasn't getting paid that much. Some of my peers were getting paid more than I went to college with. And I just couldn't find out what is it that I did wrong? I did everything everyone told me to. So for me, it was very deflating. I felt almost helpless. I was ashamed and embarrassed. And, a lot of these emotions that come out just from almost feeling defeated at that point.
Yeah.
And not knowing really who to turn. It's not like I can ask my mom, well, how did you go through it? And how did you advance the corporate world? So since then, I made it a mission to figure out, I don't know, and clearly I didn't learn how to advance in my career. That was, even though I spent so much money on this degree, that was never taught. So I really embarked on a 4 or 5 year journey of figuring out how do I advance in my career? How can I get paid more? How can I get promoted? And things just started happening really when I started my business on the side as a virtual admin. And that was, yes, I've always been interested in entrepreneurship, but I also needed some additional money to pay the bills because my job didn't pay me that much.
Sure.
And then that's when everything just started clicking and I started seeing really great results. I was able to pivot from finance to education to healthcare in the hospital setting to healthcare tech, and every single time getting at least a $30,000 salary increase, even though on paper I was only probably qualified 30%. But I was still very successful in those roles once I started working there. And that's really how everything stemmed. But I didn't plan to be a career coach. I didn't even know it existed, but it was really more for how can I figure out for myself. And now I'm able to help others and women really advance in their careers, for them to get paid, fair salaries, as well as being able to get promoted and advance into senior leadership roles as well.
Mm. So I want to just roll back the tape a little bit, although we don't use tape anymore, do we? I just aged myself.
I use tape.
So you said that, you had a 4 to 5 year journey where you were, you kind of had this sort of shocking period of time after you graduated. I did all the right things and I graduated. I thought the world was my oyster and found out it wasn't. And I really had to, figure things out. And you started, but you did have a job offer. So was that first job in finance, in the financial field?
Yes. I had to become a licensed financial advisor. So I was hired and I had to get my Series 6 and 63.
Oh, wow.
To become a licensed financial advisor. So I did that and I primarily worked on like company benefits and individuals and helping them do their wealth planning as well as insurance. And I worked with companies in managing their 401k plans as well as being an advisor for all their.
Wow. And was that related to your undergraduate degree?
No, it was, I would just became almost desperate to say like, no one's offered me jobs. And some of my friends already had job offers before we even graduated. So I just started applying randomly to every single job out there. And if I didn't hear back, I just applied to more jobs. Now I know, what to do and what not to do, but I didn't know any better back then. And they called me, never had an interest in becoming a licensed financial advisor. My background, I did graduate with a bachelor's in economics and sociology.
Oh, uh-huh.
I'm an extrovert by nature, but that was never part of my plan. I originally went to college for architecture, come to realize I'm good at it, I just don't like it. And it tends to be very isolated.
Yeah.
I wanted something where I could be around people. And being a financial advisor, you definitely are around people a lot.
Yeah. It's interesting though, also that you went after something that you were good at and discovered, oh, I don't really like this. And you figured something out about yourself. And then, and yet I admire your drive, that you said, you know what, I got to figure this out, rather than just staying in that state of, I'm kind of mortified, I'm kind of embarrassed, I'm deflated, but I'm not going to let that stop me. And you took a deep dive into a field and got credentialed in it. And how long were you in that field doing the financial advising?
I was there for about a year. I would say about a year, just because I'm a Gates Millennium Full Ride Scholar. So I had a full ride scholarship and they only allow you to take a year break between your bachelor's and starting your master's.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So that was never the plan of me just doing it for a year. When I got hired, I let them know, by the way, in a year from today or whenever I start, I'm going to be starting my master's degree. I already have a full ride scholarship. I'll be taking 9 classes. So as long as you let me work while I go to school, I'd be more than happy to work here. And they offered me the job. And when the time came to say like, hey, by the way, I got accepted, we'll start in about a month or two. They said either you choose this job or you choose your degree, but you're not going to do both. We expect you to work. And at the time I was working maybe about close to 70 hours a week. So they're like, we still expect you to work around 70 to 80 hours a week. And you can't do that while going to school, so choose. So I made my choice and I went full-time for grad school. And then I landed a job, I was working around 35 hours.
And that was in the field of education?
Yeah, so I ended up working for the university and I was first started as a graduate assistant intern. And because I really love operations, sales, and managing programs, they offered me a full-time job while I was interning and ended up working full-time while still getting my master's degree at the same time.
And being a Fulbright scholar is no minor thing either.
Yeah. They paid for my schooling, personal expenses, rent, books. I just kept wanting to acquire more skill sets because I love money. So I'm like, I need to pay my own bills and I have enough to cover for that. But I want to live, I want to go shopping. I want to get all these things for myself. And I was also heavily invested in myself. I think that during that time frame, I might have spent like close to $20,000 out of my own pocket, investing in other things besides getting a master's degree.
Yeah.
And I also had my virtual admin business at the time as well.
Oh, so you were also doing your virtual admin business on the side. Wow. And what was your master's in?
Public health policy and administration.
Oh, right. There was no grass growing under your feet. So how long till you completed the master's?
2 years. It was a 2-year program.
And so from there, is that when you went more in towards the healthcare end of things?
Yeah. So once I graduated, I needed to pivot from my background into the hospital setting in healthcare. And I was really interested in it. So I had to interview for those roles. And I would say for the role that I landed, they actually asked for someone with a nursing degree and a clinical background. And I had none of those. But I had network. And at this point in time, I already had learned to network, how to interview. And I've been practicing already for years. For fun, I would sometimes apply to jobs and just interview, just to see what the market was like, what kind of interview questions, to help me prepare. And when the time came, I was able to network myself into getting an interview. And one of the things that happened, and they asked me, and this is a really great question to ask at every single interview, and this is a must definitely for your listeners. And what I asked is, do I have your support in moving forward to next steps?
Ah.
And they said, well, we're really looking for someone with a clinical background, ideally a nursing degree, and you don't have that. And you never worked in a clinical setting, so we feel like we're going to go with someone more with that background. But because I had networked, and by this time I already knew, and I had asked questions to really understand what is the goal of this role. The goal of it was to actually, 80% of the role was to improve the patient experience. And my defense was, I totally understand it. Thank you for your transparency. Based on the discussions we've had today, it seems like your goal for this role is to really improve the patient experience. Because I don't have that clinical background, it makes me the prime prime candidate to fill this role because I don't have the clinical experience, just like our patients don't.
That's right.
If I can't understand it, our patients won't be able to understand it. And I can be that filter to really understand, is this medical terms or is it someone that anyone can understand, like myself or my family members? And I was offered the job, and I think at the time it was like a $20,000 increase, and I asked for additional $20,000 more, and ended up being I got a $30K increase from my previous job.
Wow, I love it. I love it. That must have really changed your perspective from when you finished your bachelor's degree.
Different experience, yes. I had more control. I knew exactly what I wanted. I networked with it. I had interviews at other companies, and this by far was like the best offer, where I almost doubled my income. And I think I was making on my previous job around 35, and at that time, this job paid around 75.
Yeah. And you were doing something you wanted to do. That's great. So take us forward from there.
So I worked there for about 2 years. And like I mentioned, I didn't have any experience, but I'm very good at being resourceful. And how I really made sure to advance in my role is I started networking with other people that were in the same role, whether they were at different hospitals in my area and even all over the U.S. And I just networked with them. They got on calls with me. I asked them, what is low-hanging fruit? What are can you tell me some of the projects? I'm actually having these challenges. Do you have any recommendations? And within 6 months, I had made vast improvements within the department. And it definitely captured the attention of the CEO of the hospital and called me in to say, well, how did you do this? We've been trying to do this for years. We actually have a problem across all our modalities within the hospital. Can you help us lead this task force in helping us improve our patient experience for all different departments in it? And I mean, a lot of them probably had more years of experience than I actually had been born at that time. Now everyone's, older, and I probably had been in my role for 7-8 months without any clinical background, and was able to be very successful and continued doing that. And once I knew that I left the job better than I came in, I had definitely, asked what are those metrics and measures of success. I had my conversation with my manager, and he said, I asked them like, hey, I'm ready for a promotion. Here are the measures of success we discussed. I've been able to check all of these boxes off, and I'm ready for that promotion. And I also want a salary adjustment that meets the requirements for that role. And what he told me was, well, it's not how it works here. I hope you know that I was in my role for over 10 years before I got promoted. So you just need to be patient, and when the role opens up, then we'll be able to.
I'm sure that sat really well with you, right?
Yeah, and I was there. I'm very respectful, so thank you for the transparency, and I appreciate that. So I started job searching, and my goal is, and my motto, my mission is, if they don't promote you, promote yourself. Like, I'm not here to change my manager's opinions, experiences, where if his belief is you need to be in your role for 10 years, or I'm going to be depending on someone else getting promoted or getting fired or laid off or quitting in order for me to get promoted, I'm just going to go elsewhere. And I did. I pivoted to healthcare tech, and I got another $30,000 salary increase. And again, I was probably 30% qualified, but I was very successful in the role again, and continued doing that. And then eventually I went full-time in my career coaching business now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really? So now you say you were 30% qualified for the next role. What kind of role was that?
Associate Director for Client Operations. So I was managing health plans, and then primarily at the time was for Texas, and then in Texas and Arkansas. And for example, like the Blue Cross Blue Shields were our clients, and we were managing the back-end operations. Like the call center, you would think you're calling Blue Cross Blue Shield, you were actually calling our company. And it was my responsibility, along with someone in my team or our team, to make sure we take care of the client, that we were abiding by federal and state regulations, that we were making sure that operations were running smoothly, we were meeting SLAs, we were managing contracts and having these discussions as well.
Wow. And so you say, I'm still hung up on this, I was 30% qualified. So how did you get the offer, given that there were clearly things that you had not done before in that role?
I would say 30% qualified on paper. I had transferable skills. I was great.
Okay.
I already had client experience.
Yeah.
It just wasn't managing health plans, but I had managed clients when I was a financial advisor. I managed vendors when I was in education, when I was working at a university. And then when I was working as a quality assurance manager, I also had to work with constituents like physicians, patients, and as well as other vendors. So I was able to really morph my transferable skills and make it applicable to the role itself.
Okay.
Now, where I didn't know specific situations, I actually reached out to, before I started interviewing, I reached out to my department to say, hey, by the way, I'm interviewing Tammy for a role in your department. I see you're doing this role. I would appreciate and love it if you can, spend 20, 30 minutes with me, asking some questions. And I understand you're busy. So if anything, I'd be happy to email you those questions if that's easier for you. A lot of them got on a call with me and said, hey, thanks for reaching out. Here's the deal. Here's what they need. Here's what we do on a daily basis. Here's some of my challenges. And honestly, if you can get these 3 to 4 things down, you'll be super successful in this role. And that's what I focused on. And I got the role, and come to find out that a lot of them were asked to give feedback on all the candidates. And because I had reached out and talked to a lot of them, they all voted for me to get the job.
Wow.
So sometimes you got to create your own luck.
Right. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. In fact, the guest that I had on the podcast for the last episode talks exactly about different kinds of luck and serendipity and how we create things that really increase our odds of having things that we often will call a coincidence, when in fact there are probabilities of increasing those things. And I think some of the things that you did definitely increase that. And I'm sure developing those relationships with people, made a huge difference. Huge. So, and you knew what you wanted too. I think that's the other key piece. You were going after something you really wanted, and you had that focus. So So from there, you did hang up your own shingle and became a coach from there. How did that come about, and how long were you with the healthcare tech company?
So I started my business. So my career coaching business, I've had it now in place for almost 8 years.
Okay.
And I went full time in 2020. So at that time, I was almost at a crossroads. I love doing sales and marketing, and that's what I've been doing a lot. As a business owner, you have to do sales and marketing.
Right.
And I was at a crossroads. So I just wanted to pivot industries and go into sales in our marketing role. Should I go full time in my business? And once I started discussing with my managers and my mentors within the company, a role actually came up within the company itself. And they said, you know what? We would love to see, if you'd be a really good fit for this role. And everything was perfect. And then eventually, I think that at the time, they're like, well, we realized that we need to fill this role first before we can fill it. And honestly, I don't think it's a priority right now until the next maybe 2 to 3 years. But I think you'd be a really good fit for this role. And I really had to assess. And at the time, my husband and I were building our home. That's when my husband, this is really like, I had his support and I love him for supporting me so much. And he said, why don't you just go all in your business? You're already doing this. Why not go all in your business? I support you. Whatever you need, you're there. You've been more than ready at this point. I was probably working about 50 hours and on my job, and I was probably working another 20 to 30 hours on my business.
Yeah.
So that's when I really, I just respectfully declined the offer, even though it was another $30,000 salary increase, and I went full time on my business.
Wow. And were there other things you did along the way to build I would imagine that in the work itself, you built and developed coaching skills, but were there other things you did along the way to develop a coaching practice?
Yes, like I said, I heavily invest in myself, and I think on average, I spend anywhere between $20,000 to $30,000 a year out of my own pocket to get with mentors, be part of mastermind groups, to learn coaching. And I'm an avid reader, so I continue reading books. I purchase courses, and better to even understand also sometimes my patients, and not patients, but my clients with their experience. Like, I also continue my education. So, for example, in 2021, a lot of my clients were in marketing and marketing tech. So I went to MIT and received a marketing and digital analytics certification from MIT. And I continue now. I see the trend going towards AI. So my next thing is to really start taking courses when it comes to AI, machine learning, NLP, just so I can have a better understanding of my clients, but also where the trends are going.
Right. So and I think
heavily,
yeah. And I think I love the way you look ahead as you're in the middle of growing at the same time. It's really an interesting way that you've developed yourself. And I hope people who are listening really kind of get that, because I'm not sure everybody can do that. I think some people have to, it's like some people can mush their food together on the plate, and other people have to have it all be very separate. And I get the feeling like you're someone who, it's okay if the food's touching. So that's wonderful. And I'm seeing a lot out there right now about AI and how to have AI even help people move their job search forward. It's, so there's that piece of it. And of course, the whole field, in terms of what kinds of careers in AI are going to keep developing as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see where you go forward with that as well. So take us to where you are today and all that you're doing today, because you've been doing a lot with this. Tell us about your coaching practice and the work you're doing with individuals and in organizations, and what that looks like, and how people can learn more about what you're doing.
So, as you mentioned, I'm a career coach, and I primarily work with women in tech, both in technical and non-technical roles. And I would say that's 80% of my client base, while the other 20% are usually within marketing, sales, or finance. And what I really work with them now is really how to find fulfilling jobs and how to get the job and land the job in the next 90 days or less. And on average, my clients get 54% in salary increases. So I've had clients get anywhere between $30,000 and even up to $140,000 in additional earned income. And they've been able to get jobs for as soon as 5 weeks, depending on my clients, what their needs and goals are. So right now I work with my clients, like I said, and I help them land their jobs, and I offer them mock interviews, mock salary negotiation sessions. I also work with them on a group coaching basis or more individual, depending on, again, their needs and where they're at. And that's really what I'm working on. And, if anyone's interested in, learning more about me or just want more free career advice, they can find me on LinkedIn at Claudia T. Miller. And that's where I share a lot of information.
Oh, that's great. So people can learn a lot more about your approach to things and all of that on LinkedIn. That's great. I'm curious, you've made a lot of different moves and clearly have a lot of drive and confidence, it seems. And I know that I'm sure you've had your moments because you're human. So when you think about all the transitions you've made, we have a lot of people listening here who've made a lot of transitions and who are looking to make their next transition, very likely. What would be a key piece of advice that you might give somebody who's trying to figure out what their next steps are and how to go about getting started on that?
So I would say my model for everything and what I recommend a lot for your listeners is, I love this quote by Jerry Rice, is do what others won't to achieve what others can't. So once you understand how people work, and most of them are very similar in nature. Like I mentioned, when people are job searching, first thing they do is probably look for jobs, then they find time, then they update their resume as best as they can, and they go and apply. And if they don't hear back, you go and apply for more. And if you don't hear back, you roll up your sleeves and then you apply to more jobs up until you get a job. So now we know that that's human nature. That's what the competition is doing.
Right.
Once you know what the competition is doing, just do an extra 10, 15%, and you're going to stand out. Instead of just doing that, connect with that person on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great tool we have now where I can find any recruiter out there for whatever job posting or the hiring manager and reach out to them directly. Do this and you're already increasing your chance. If you want to pivot or transition, reach out to people who have done a transition and ask them, how do they do it? What were some of the things? How will they do things differently today? What would you say are the hardest skills to hire for in this role? And use that information as leverage and use it against your branding materials like resume, cover letter, LinkedIn profile. Also mention that in your interview skills. And that's how you're able to make transition. Just because you're going from one industry to the other doesn't mean you need to start from scratch. Doesn't mean you need to take a pay cut. So a lot of my clients have transitioned and they've been very successful. And we always make it a point that they need to get paid more, even though they're pivoting industries, because again, it doesn't mean they have no experience. We're just translating that now into this specific industry. Or for this.
Right. Great advice. I concur with your advice. Anything else that you want to leave our listeners with that they should know about the job market or being successful out there?
I would say this specifically more towards your female audiences, because I know that, for women, we feel like we need to qualify 80 to 100% of the job posting in order to apply, versus men, whereas they can look at a job posting and data shows that as long as they're about 60% qualified, they apply for the job. And that's honestly the way you should be doing it. If you fill 80 to 100% of the qualifications in the job posting, that means you're overqualified or you're going to be bored. Most people like to be challenged. Most people like to learn new things. Otherwise, it gets very boring, mundane, and then that's when you start hating going to work. So if you are 80 to 100%, I promise you in the next 3 to 6 months, you're going to be bored and you're going to be job searching again. How can we avoid that? Start being into you don't have to go as aggressive as I did in 30%, but at least a 60%, and then start applying to those jobs, because that means you have 40% of things to learn you're sharpening your skill set, you're being challenged, and you're continuing moving and advancing in your career versus being stagnant and falling behind.
Yeah, I love that. Great advice. Great advice. I think too often people shy away from those job descriptions where it looks like they're not qualified enough or they don't have enough experience in a particular industry. And I think they haven't given enough credit to themselves and to their networks to help them move and get a foot in the door too. So I appreciate that very much. I appreciate you and the kind of role model you are for so many women and women of color. Wonderful, wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for being here, Claudia. I really appreciate what you're up to, and I'm really excited to see where you're going next.
Thank you, Tammy. Thanks for having me. And for whoever your listeners may be interested in, or maybe they're job searching, I have my $10,000 word for word salary negotiation script that I'd be happy to share with your listeners. So if they're interested, they just have to read the script, and my clients have been able to get $10,000 and even up to $30,000 in additional earned income. I just ask your listeners to practice it before they use the script, but they will have the word for word, so that way they don't have to figure out what to say.
So is there a link that we can provide to them?
Yes.
Okay, we'll put that in the show notes. And yeah, it'll definitely go in the show notes. We'll put the link in there. Do you want to mention it right now?
It's a very complex link.
Okay.
But yes, it'll be in the show notes. It's, like I said, the $10,000 word for word salary negotiation.
All right. Well, I'm sure if someone hears that, they're going to want to find the link. So we will make sure they have the link. That's very generous. It's a lovely gift. And everybody who doesn't want to have those words, everybody's always looking for those words. Thank you again so much for being here. And we'll see you all next time. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Claudia Miller. It was so interesting to speak with her and learn about her earlier life and all her transitions and her current work. What is your key takeaway from our interview? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygoularloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 222. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my award-winning book, Work from the Inside Out: Break Through 9 Common Obstacles and Design a Career That Fulfills You. It's available through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, or through your local library. If you are inspired by this episode with Claudia, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and please do subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. If you're enjoying the podcast, I would love to read your written review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find through my website at tammygoularloeb.com/podcast. Just click on the Apple Podcast button and follow the instructions provided there. You can also help sustain this podcast by buying me a cup of coffee. Just go to buymeacupofcoffee.com/TammyGL. Since this podcast is self-funded, I would so appreciate your support. Thanks so much for listening, and remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd love to hear from you. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.